excellent panel today, which is also very diverse in terms of the companies and the profile of the companies that are represented here. To my immediate left, Per Johan Budje, Commercial Director of Equinor. Per is a very good friend of mine and someone who's been based in Luanda for a couple of years now. Then next, Chief Tunde Josep Afolabi, who is the CEO of Amni International, which is an indigenous Nigeria E&P company based in Lagos. Then Nelson Pekavira, who is the current CEO of Somoil. I guess Somoil is, of course, familiar to most of you as an indigenous, I would say the leading indigenous oil company in Angola. Then Pedro Ribeiro, who was in the panel yesterday and who is the Deputy General Manager for Total Angola. Total, of course, needs no introduction. In any case, I underlie the comment or the facts that Pedro mentioned yesterday, that Total is responsible for 45% of the Angola production and participates in, as operator and non-operator, in 80% of the oil production in Angola, which is, of course, impressive. And last but not the least, Tim O'Andon, who is the Vice President of Exploration for Tullow Oil. Tullow, I guess, also, we don't need any introduction other than the fact that, of course, a leading African exploration and production company who is present in several countries in Africa, West Africa and East Africa. So that's our panel of speakers, participants today. I will kick off with Per and to ask him, based on his already experience of 3 or 4 years, how do you see the current trends in the exploration and production industry, and how do you compare the current environment to the environment that existed when you first came into Angola a few years ago?
Okay, thanks, Ray. I'll give you some headlines of the main trends that we see. Obviously, investments in brownfields have commenced again, like in Block 17, where we're a partner. I think that is due primarily to that we have a higher oil price, and also that, you know, the costs are coming down to the deflation we've seen over the last few years. So it's not directly linked to the new terms that we heard about yesterday. Some of the legacy fields in Angola are coming off plateau and going into decline, and we also see that they're coming towards the end of their licenses. So that has triggered negotiations with the concessionaire to extend some of these licenses, and we've seen that, you know, some of the companies are successful with that by letting Sonangol into the licenses. So so Sonangol is coming into the upstream legacy fields. We have the marginal field decree that we talked about yesterday. There are a lot of undeveloped discoveries in Angola that doesn't work with the current terms, and I think a number of licenses are bringing forward projects and approaching the concessionaire to get approved the new terms. And for example, Equinor, we're a partner in Block 31, and we're optimistic that we can again develop some fields that was discovered more than 10 years ago. We have the ALNG plant in the north. It needs more feed gas. The natural gas law will trigger some investments to develop gas in the north. Whether that also will trigger investments in some of the gas that has been discovered in the south, in the Consa blocks, that remains to be seen. We see that exploration is again delivering results. We've heard about the fantastic success of ENI in Block 1506. We know that Total will start drilling in the ultra-deep water in Block 48, which is also very exciting. We have the agency that will now commence with annual licensing rounds, starting up with the Namib Basin. I think again, very exciting. And finally, you have the transition of Sonangol from a concessionaire role moving into a commercial NOC company with a view to privatization. So we will see Sonangol more as a partner and also as an operator going forward. So I think yesterday we heard that someone mentioned, a potential of investments of $10 billion going forward over the next few years. And based on our assessment, I think that's not unlikely. And I think it's a combination of some new terms, some reorganizations, but also the general environment is more conducive to investments across the industry these days.
Thank you, Per. I will now turn to Chief Tunde, the CEO of Amni International. We are, of course, familiar with the Nigeria marginal field program, which has been largely successful and has encouraged the growth of the local oil industry and local indigenous companies. And of course, your company is very much involved in that program. From your experience in Nigeria, what lessons do you believe that Angola can draw from the Nigeria experience? Also, what mistakes Angola can avoid from that experience? And what would it take for a company like yours to invest in Angola right now?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me here. I don't deserve to be here because I'm the smallest fish in this big pond. As an African, we have an ethics that you don't go to a man's house to criticize him. So whatever you see there, no matter how bad, you still say complimentary things about him. However, I can criticize my home, which is Nigeria, where I came from. And I think what qualifies me to be the representative today is that I was there at the beginning when the indigenous oil program started in Nigeria in 1988. And luckily, I got to be a partaker in licensee in some of those fields that were given out. So what I'm going to do is going to say where we got it wrong in Nigeria. And hopefully, those of you who are the moderators and those who write the script for Angolan oil industry can probably pick up a few things that we did wrong that we do not want to do in Angola. So we started the marginal or indigenous oil program in Nigeria with no clear roadmap, right? And what I've heard so far in the last 2 days shows that there has been a lot of thinking that went into the program that was being implemented in Angola. However, when we started in Nigeria in 1988, we had 43 companies that were licensed to operate in the marginal fields. And today, only 3 of us survived. So I'm not so sure that I really want to classify that as a success. 2 other producers have come up since we had the IOC's divestment in the last 5 years that have picked up a few other blocks. Now, one of the problems that we had then was that there was no fiscal regime that operated the industry at the time. So we were called sole risk licensees with marginal fees. And when I say marginal, some of us had 1 million barrel reserves and some had 50 million barrels reserves, right? But they were all under the same fiscal term that operated with the IOCs, the international oil companies. So it was extremely difficult to raise money to operate those blocks. So a lot of those guys failed. Now, I don't know what the sizes are for the fields in Angola that have been, put on the market. But one thing that, would have to be done is to get fiscal terms in there that will be gradational to say that the smaller your reserves, the lower your tax obligations, and the more barrels you produce, the higher you pay. That will help in raising money to explore or develop those assets. Then in Nigeria, we have too many forced marriages, meaning that we put people whose interests are not aligned together as partners in an asset. And invariably, they fight each other to a standstill, and they never do anything, so invariably they fail. And I think, the biggest issue, again, is financing. Of course, none of the banks in Nigeria at the time was big enough to finance even one indigenous company at the time. And, none of the assets was big enough for any of the foreign banks to come and invest in. So you end up having, I call them vultures that came from the West just to pick on, the carcasses of whatever licenses they could find, make a quick money and run away. So these are the, so I'm not going to come here and say this is what I'm recommending for Angola to do, but these are the mistakes that we made in Nigeria. Okay? So I'm hoping that the minister, the new director of our own APR would work together with the Ministry of Finance to find ways to make the participation of the indigenous companies in this enterprise meaningful. And for AMNI to come here, I'm here. So if there's any asset that anybody here wants to discuss with me, in fact, we have about 8 AMNI representatives in the hall here. We're here to look for good deals. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Nelson, when we think about an Angolan indigenous oil company, some oil comes to mind. Well, if for no other reason, because the number of indigenous Angolan companies is still relatively limited. We are, of course, familiar with the regulatory and legal framework changes that were put in place last year to encourage exploration in marginal fields, and I suppose that local companies and indigenous companies would want to participate in that exploration. So the question to you is, what is it from your experience that you think that it's still needed? What is it that Angola still needs so that indigenous companies can be competitive and so that we see more indigenous companies bidding for the new acreage, for the oil blocks. We saw yesterday the program for licensing 55 new blocks in the next few years. What is it that we need for local companies to participate in that program?
Obrigado. Se me permitem, eu vou falar em português. Portanto, como foi dito, a Sobol é a primeira empresa privada de petróleos a operar no país. Comparativamente à Nigéria, onde cerca de 50 empresas são indígenas, eu prefiro chamar nacionais, são operadoras, nós enfrentamos alguns desafios. Como primeira, nós operamos no bloco das associações FSFST no onshore há 10 anos. Estamos também no bloco 2 offshore, águas rasas. E como o Chifa acabou de mencionar, e eles estão há mais tempo nestas operações, sentimos algumas dificuldades financeiras, muito também fruto da crise econômica baseada na baixa do preço do petróleo, que vem ocorrendo desde 2014, criou-nos algumas dificuldades e eu penso que para a saída dessas situações e para que mais empresas angolanas possam operar nos blocos, devíamos realmente, aliás, eu acho que o Executivo já tomou algumas medidas que facilitam a entrada das empresas angolanas no mercado de petróleo, mas achava por bem que fosse possível as empresas nacionais fazerem um consórcio com pequenas ou médias empresas, tais como a Mini ou uma outra empresa que tem maior capacidade tecnológica, maior capacidade técnica e financeira, para poder ajudar-nos a impulsionar a nossa atividade, a atividade das operadoras nacionais como a Somol e de outras que poderão vir, e assim, num futuro não muito longínquo, podermos ter a semelhança da Nigéria, um número maior de operadores angolanos. É isso que precisamos dizer.
Okay, thank you, Nelson. Now I turn to Pedro Ribeiro. As I said earlier, some 45% of the oil barrels produced in Angola are coming from Total and produced by Total. So I think it's fair to assume that if Angola is to succeed in its objective of maintaining or even increasing the current production from 1.4 million barrels a day to 1.5, 6, whatever, in the coming years, if that objective is to be achieved, I would say that Total will have to play a major role in achieving that objective. So my question to you is, despite all the success that Total has had in Angola for the last 20-something years, with major discoveries, etc., do you still believe that Angola is an underexplored area? Do you still see opportunities in, namely, offshore, deep offshore? And how achievable do you think is that Angola will be able to invert the current decline curve and to increase production in the foreseeable future?
Boa tarde a todos, obrigado pelo convite para esta palestra. Eu vou responder à sua pergunta de uma maneira completamente diferente, que é a seguinte: a exploração é, antes de tudo, uma ideia de gênio, à qual depois, com base ou associado à tecnologia, à parte financeira e contratual, se transforma uma ideia numa realidade. E para mim, há várias condições que têm de estar reunidas para que de facto tenhamos uma exploração de sucesso, e antes de tudo é uma experiência humana, é o gênio humano, e muitas vezes nos esquecemos disso. Começamos a falar de contratos, dinheiro, e é importante, mas esquecemos da parte do gênio e da ideia. Vou citar um chefe meu muito antigo que me disse: quando tiveres um chefe de exploração que começa a dizer que já não há potencial, troca o chefe de exploração, que ele é que já deixou de perceber o que está a acontecer. Portanto, a partir do momento em que se criam essas condições e se tem essa criação de ideias novas, pronto, depois posso falar com palavras muito caras, estratigrafia, sequências geológicas, sísmica 3D, etc. Portanto, mas isso são ferramentas onde o gênio humano, angolano e não só, juntos criam uma ideia nova que nós depois, com as ferramentas que são de facto as finanças, as sondas de perfuração, os contratos que assinamos com os países onde trabalhamos, sendo uma AOG ou não, ou companhias nacionais, depois o vamos materializar. Portanto, a resposta é muito clara e muito simples. Em Angola temos muitas ideias, temos que encontrar essas ferramentas para as poder concretizar. E, portanto, Angola tem um potencial ainda muito grande, não vou dizer enorme, porque não quero. E quando olhamos depois, muito simplesmente para um mapa, nós exploramos muitas ideias em toda a parte da bacia do Com, Baixo Com, mas temos toda uma costa, e não só, também em terra, uma série de bacias que estão relativamente bem delimitadas em termos geológicos, onde é preciso abrir essa possibilidade para que as pessoas possam ter ideias, para que a indústria teste conceitos e volte a abrir novas bacias. Portanto, volto à minha primeira frase: quando alguém lhe disser que um país já não tem potencial de exploração, o Mar do Norte, a Noruega, uma série de outros países já o provaram que isso é um erro estrutural. E, portanto, é preciso criar esse espaço onde as pessoas possam exprimir essa capacidade de ter novas ideias e executá-las.
Okay, thank you, Pedro, for a very candid response. Tim, you're lost in the first round. I'm gonna pose a very direct question to you. Tullow is, of course, present in many countries in Africa, including some areas that before you came in were not obvious place for the oil industry, and you were kind of a first mover and an explorer. Why is it that Tullow is not in Angola today? And what would it take you to come to Angola tomorrow?
Okay, thanks for that introduction. I'm with Tullow from day one, 1986, so one of the founders of the company, but we found ourselves accidentally in Africa. We didn't particularly target. You got to start somewhere, and our first project happened to be in Senegal, where we had a nickel and dime gas project. We missed the big one there, though. We are not in Angola today, and we certainly can't afford not to be, because it's one of the giants of Africa, and if you're serious about Africa, you've got to be in Angola. We were in Angola, we're not here today, and we want to come back, so I have to be very careful what I say. Otherwise, but I, as someone who was here before, we must be kind of welcome back, because I had no trouble with my visa this morning. Came straight in, warm welcome from everybody. So we were in Block 1 offshore in the Lower Congo Basin, probably 10 or 15 years ago, and we struggled a bit. Block 1 is Block 1. It's kind of a bypass zone. It's got some small discoveries in there, which would have been perfect for, let's say, old Tullow. But then while we were doing that, we found Ghana, the Jubilee field in Ghana, which is like 1 billion barrels, and at literally the same time over in Uganda, another 1.5 billion barrels. So we were still nickel and dime company with only so many human resources, and we had to drop Block 1. So it is not a commentary on Angola, it is a commentary on our journey and priorities. So we want to come back. We see big changes here now. The market has evolved. There are, and Tullow as well. We've come out of this existential crisis that we all faced over the last few years. We not alone can we do big exploration, frontier stuff like that put these African countries on the map that you talked about, Ghana, Uganda, Kenya, and others. We would love to do frontier work here. In the Namib Basin, for example, that's a place where we believe there's great potential. But there are others, onshore Soyo, onshore Kwanza Basin, offshore Kwanza Basin. The problem is, as usual, it's a country has one size fits all fiscal regime, which is totally appropriate when you've got something as fantastic as Lower Congo Basin. But by definition, it is holding exploration back in frontier areas, which still exist within the sovereign nation. So you do need a more sophisticated fiscal regime, and I'm not talking about marginal fields, they need help too, but high-risk areas that could have huge potential. Now, for an outsider like Tullow, who is not in here, we would need those type of incentives. We haven't seen them yet in Angola, but I bet you they're coming. The first tranche of changes in the last 12 or 18 months have been amazing, and they will transform the scene, but mainly for the in-situ players. The marginal field definition is the existing operators will be the main beneficiaries, the gas terms, but so we need we need attractive terms for exploration in frontier areas for people who are outside the country still. Also, there are some obstacles like the only way you can have a block outside of a licensed round, you end up with a risk service agreement, which isn't ideal for an independent like us. But I believe there's a will to change that law, and just like the law changed last year, these things can be easily changed, and Angola is very sophisticated. It knows exactly how the market works, and it knows what it has to do. So, but we already have our eyes on other things. There is a whole second-hand market opening up in, not just in Angola, in the whole West African margin, as the majors have to focus on, bigger, more material projects. For example, these for ExxonMobil. And they too have finite resources, and the clock is ticking maybe on our sector, so there will naturally be a drift away from this area by traditional majors. But that's not bad. That's a good thing. There are more dynamic players. There are players like us, where these assets could be very material to us. We're good explorers. We can explore in and around those things, which hasn't happened to date. And so that whole area is of interest to Tullow as well, something we wouldn't have been able to do a few years ago. And so for me, Angola is like a sweet shop. It's just full of opportunities left and right, brownfield, frontier, oil, gas, onshore, offshore. It's a dream scenario, and we just need help with the fiscal terms for us to be back.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, we have some 10 minutes left, and I would not like this panel to wrap up before discussing, even if briefly, the topic of gas. So I would pose the question to the panel, perhaps starting with Per. How do you see the gas potential of Angola in light, specifically, of the recent legislation to facilitate gas exploration?
Angola has some gas, but it's not a gas region like Nigeria or Mozambique or Tanzania, but it has some gas, maybe 10 TCF of gas. I think, as I already mentioned, there is a process to create a gas consortium in the north of Angola to supply the ALNG, which need feed gas in the next 3 to 4 years in order to continue to operate. And then you do have 4 to 5 TCF of gas in the south of the country in the former Cobalt blocks in 2021. And of course now you have the natural gas law that gives you the right to develop the gas, to commercialize the gas, to choose your market for the gas. But as we see, around the coast of Africa, it is difficult to commercialize deep water gas. So it's not straightforward, and I think it needs a combined effort of the industry, the contractors, and the state to make it work, because deep water gas is difficult. After the shale revolution in the US, the gas price has gone down 70-80% of the last few years. So some potential, but it's going to take some hard work. I think the biggest potential is to provide feed gas from some small discoveries in the north to ALNG.
Pedro, Total being a major gas player, what's your view on the gas potential of Angola?
Yeah, I would take a different view. Sorry, I switched to English. Eu tomaria ponto de vista pouco diferente, porque existe de facto mercado de gás que tem se tornado cada vez mais fluido através do GNL e contratos, etc. Mas eu acho que há uma perspectiva muito interessante em Angola, é que, embora nós tenhamos muito hidroelétrico, ainda hoje temos um consumo de geração elétrica que é feita com gasóleo ou com heavy fuel. E isso tem um custo extremamente elevado. Portanto, eu penso que o potencial de gás em Angola tem que ser visto também como irá conduzir o desenvolvimento económico do país através da geração elétrica. E se começarmos a comparar, portanto, existe essa dicotomia entre o preço do gás nos Estados Unidos em GNL e que isso poderia matar um gás em deep offshore angolano. Isso é um facto, pronto, podemos discutir durante muito tempo. Mas, ao mesmo tempo, existe nesta região uma falta de energia elétrica que é gerada a partir de gasóleo, ou jet, em alguns casos. Nesse caso, a energia é extremamente cara. Então, já cria-se assim um espaço para um gás que eventualmente é mais caro do que o que está na bacia diretamente, mas que para a geração elétrica em Angola se abre uma oportunidade de desenvolvimento. Pronto, isto é um aspecto um pouco económico. Claro que não estamos a falar de 1000 TCFs, como no Irão ou no Catar, mas pronto, eu penso que essa perspectiva é importante para Angola. Associado a isso, existe também a perspectiva de algum desenvolvimento petroquímico, etc., que podem ser clientes, portanto, para um volume. De facto, Angola hoje é uma província muito pequena em termos de volumes de gás e a sua produção. Mas depois volta à minha frase do início, durante muitos anos na nossa indústria, como não existiu incentivo, ou seja, os grupos empreiteiros não tinham acesso à venda do gás, portanto, à valorização desses recursos, e isso traduziu-se, portanto, penso eu, por esses volumes não tão importantes. Novamente, penso que amanhã as pessoas vão voltar a questionar sobre esse potencial e quais as bacias que poderiam vir ou não a produzir gás. E Angola é um país que está vem a crescer, vai continuar a crescer mais, vai precisar de energia e a maneira mais barata de gerar energia é através do gás, que, para além disso, polui muito menos do que o carvão ou as suas outras alternativas que hoje se nos apresentam.
Tim, your view on gas?
Gas is a tricky one. It's not for the faint-hearted. Botola was born in the gas business. That first project I referred to in Senegal was gas for power generation. It's just as hard to find as oil from a G&G point of view. It's problem, of course, is that it isn't transported easily. So you have the same price of oil in Chad, Chile, China, wherever you are. You mightn't like the price, but it's the same price. Whereas gas, you can have vast quantities of gas where it's zero, or if you're plugged into a market and you find a wee bit, you can be laughing. So gas is intellectually more challenging than oil. You have to figure out everything from finding it, to producing it, to who's going to pay to flick a switch in maybe some other country. And all of those commercial issues have to be solved before you start your big spending. But Angola has its gas resources. Oilmen and women, of course, are used to dealing with gas associated with the oil they produce, or when they stumble on gas, as they did in East Africa, in Mozambique and Tanzania. But vast quantities does help. We had a kudu project offshore Namibia, and plenty of people before us had it, and plenty of people since have had it, and it's just of that troublesome size, 1 or 2 TCF, that is so hard to monetize. It needs carrot and stick from government. It needs the incentives, which the government has obviously started to do here by allowing ownership of gas on our side of the table. And eventually the fundamentals for the gas market will mean the market will come to Angola for its gas, such as even with the arrival of shale, the future is still bright for gas. Because oil is the new coal and gas is the new oil, so it's got a bright 10, 20, 30, 40 years ahead. And Angola is well placed to benefit from that.
Thank you. Chief Tunde for a quick comment on gas as well.
Well, again, I'm a small fish in this pond. But you know, the unfortunate equation for ERP companies is that their first target is oil. I don't know how many ERP companies actually go out there to say they are looking for gas. They go and explore for oil, and then they find gas along the way. So they have no clue what they're going to do with the gas until they find it. And considering the size of gas that we're talking about in Angola, I think maybe, you know, another approach should be taken. I don't know what is the primary source of power generation in Angola right now, but 15 TCF of gas can be burnt, you know, a long time ago. And if you ask countries like Equatorial Guinea or whatever, okay, they will tell you how quickly you can go through 1, 2, 3, 4 TCF of gas. So I think maybe there should be a real look at how you utilize your gas reserves here to where they don't become stranded in somebody's reservoir or at worst be fled. So, but AMNI is a gas company that has oil to produce. So our main focus right now is to monetize our gas, and what we are doing mostly is doing petrochemicals, mostly propylene, doing some refinery, which requires some power, and some power generation, which Nigeria needs very badly. So what I think maybe Angola should look at very seriously is an alternative internal use of that gas, rather than be looking for an external export.
Nelson, para terminar, gostava de ouvir também a sua opinião sobre o gás natural em Angola.
Bom, durante muitos anos o gás produzido em Angola, que é um gás, primeiramente um gás associado ao óleo, não teve da parte das empresas multinacionais ou operadoras no país o interesse devido. Durante muito tempo a Angola queimava o gás e não foi depois que o governo de Angola decretou a política de zero queima de gás que se começaram então a movimentar as empresas começaram a se movimentar para tentar tirar vantagens do gás. Portanto, o gás era queimado ou injetado para a pressão dos reservatórios. Portanto, com a nova lei de gás que permite às empresas tirarem vantagens do gás, começa-se agora a ter uma outra apreciação do seu valor. E é assim que a Sonangol também criou a empresa Sonagás para ser, portanto, o guia, uma empresa que vai monitorar esse gás e permitir que o governo de Angola tire vantagens deste recurso. Portanto, a sua aplicação, como os meus colegas do painel disseram, para Angola, neste momento, deve ser virar-se primeiramente para abastecer, como fonte de energia para abastecimento das grandes turbinas, dos grandes geradores, para o desenvolvimento da indústria nacional.
Thank you. Do we still have time for one of two pressing questions from the audience? I guess so. So, anyone wants to address a question to the panel? Please raise your hand. No questions? Well, no, I see no hands, so I guess there's no questions. Well, if that's the case, yeah, that's time to wrap up this session. Thank you for the panel members. I think we had a very interesting and insightful discussion, and look forward to, I guess we have a coffee break now. Thank you.